Before we go forward, I just want to add one more thing, actually, to what Colleen said. You know, I'm a young man. I'm 26 years old, and I always think about when we're doing this, how meaningful it would have been to me to have found a series like this when I was beginning my learning experience in the tarot, and how impactful that would have been for me. So everything that I said at the beginning, it was not an aim to disparage anybody's contribution to the group or discourage anybody, but just to say that I hope we can all make a meaningful contribution and really leave behind something very useful for people who are watching it pretty close to now and also in the future.
Right. So
Thank you, Nick.
So let's actually talk about the Hanged Man, and let me sort of restart the evening, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to clip out this first 45 minutes worth of this conversation. So only if you're here live do you get to hear it, and unbelievably we have 32 people watching live right now. So you folks heard the gears spinning as we discuss these things. But good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about the Hanged Man, and we're talking about the tarot as a roadmap for life. And what do we mean by that? We mean that this system, not the divination, not the prophecy or the fortune telling aspect of it, but the system of the tarot itself points to divine forces, invisible forces, forces that nobody can put their finger on, which actually control all of our lives and have done since the beginning of humanity, everywhere and always, and will continue to do as long as there are human beings. And so part of the point of our discussion of each of these archetypal images is to point out that this idea that we're talking about on each of these evenings is something that is unchanging, and the basic tarot set has not changed for 600 years. That's an amazing fact. And so there are many tarot decks, as you've probably seen if you've watched this series before, and so it means that many different people can have a different way of looking at this same energy or force that exists in our lives. And if we look at it from many different points, it's like looking at a crystal ball that's got many facets on it, and it shines differently if you look at it differently. And so we're just trying to talk about that energy and what it is. And I talk about archetypes as if they are dry riverbeds, where if energy is put through them like water going through a dry riverbed, it will flow in a certain way. And that's exactly what happens in all of these archetypes. And so the result is that you know, when somebody becomes a mother, you know, pretty much she's a mother like all human mothers have been since time immemorial and will be into the future. But it's when the energy that passes through that structure that you have the combination that makes that force important. That's a simple example, but it really relates to all of these cards in some way. And so tonight we're going to talk about the Hanged Man, and let's just go around the room and have each of the panelists first talk about what the Hanged Man means to them, and then we'll come back and look at some pictures. So, Nick, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I have several different notes written down, so as the evening progresses, we'll get to hopefully most of those points, but maybe not. But the initial thoughts that I would say, start with saying another title that I like to apply to this is Suspended Mind. I think about water and lead and Saturn and upside down sulfur.
Why is that meaningful to you, Nick? I mean,
Well,
I understand that those are alchemical ideas, but
okay, so
most people wouldn't understand why that
okay,
would be significant to you.
okay, so the Hebrew letter associated with the card is Mem, which has for its pictograph water. And I say Saturn because the hangman is hung from a T cross. So anytime you see a T in the tarot, it's representative of the Tau cross, which is a T. And upside down sulfur, because if you look at the way that his limbs are arranged, he makes a sulfur symbol that's inverted.
Okay, I guess I should have put one of the cards on the screen. So let me find where I have the.
And I'm sure that that's still maybe somewhat abstract, but that is the bulk of what I have things written for. So I'll do my best to clarify on all that as we go on.
So I'm going to get rid of that one. And this one I'm going to wait on. Okay, I'm going to show the four mains first so that everybody can have a clear idea of what the hanged man looks like. And so that you can follow what Nick is saying. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, so in this deck, we have, or in this set of four, which Robert Wang discusses all the cards in something called, in a book called The Kabbalistic Tarot, which is an excellent book. And he discusses these four decks in detail for every card. And so in the upper left, we have the Golden Dawn card, which was a set of cards that were developed by Paul Foster Case and the people who worked in the Golden Dawn about a century ago.
That's not the Paul Foster Case. That's Israel Regardie.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Robert Wang actually painted that card, and he painted it with the help of Israel Regardie. So you're quite right. So the other card on the right is the Aleister Crowley card, which is from the Thoth deck, so-called. The one on the lower left is the Rider-Waite-Colman deck, which is the most popular deck these days in the United States, and it's sort of the deck that everybody begins on. And the card on the right is the Tarot de Marseille. And here, Jordan, again, there's a lacuna in this eye, so I'm wondering if it's just the way those decks were or what. But anyway, so anyway, carry on.
Oh, it's a common thematic element, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting because in the previous card, it seemed like it might have just been a blemish, but here, which this may be just coincidence, but it could have to do with the one-eyed god Odin hanging from the world tree.
Yeah, and here in the Israel Regardie deck, the Golden Dawn deck, this guy is looking off to his right, and so you can only see one eye in the image.
Yeah, and I make the sulfur comment and the Saturn comment and all that stuff, and we can go further into it because I have some material that's relevant to that. But in the bottom left, the Rider-Waite deck, a lot of the symbolism is veiled in this deck. So unless you know that the symbol for the Hebrew letter Tav is a Tau cross, the T that he's hung from, you wouldn't necessarily pick up on the fact that it's actually representative of Saturn and being hung from the limitation of Saturn. But in the Golden Dawn card above it, they have the wooden tree, the framework that he's hung from there. That is the Hebrew letter Tav or Tau.
Hmm.
So they don't veil some of the symbolism in that card.
Yeah, and I noticed that that a number of these cards do miss some of the key symbols. Some of the painters have missed the key symbols for the cards. Not that that is terrible, because everybody has their point of view, but
if we're going to move on from this series of cards, I think it might be wise of me to just go ahead and say what I can say about what I've said so far before we get too far away from
all
this
right,
image.
go ahead.
So let's see here. So as I discussed on the previous card, the 11th card is the center of the sequence of the major arcana. And I don't know how many of you will remember, but I had prepared an image last week of the tarot in a circle, and the Justice card was at the very bottom, the Nadir. And now this card is beginning the upswing on the other side. So it's the second half of the sequence beginning its rise back up around the circle. And so like I said, he's hanging from the T. And anytime you see a T in the tarot, it has to do with Saturn. So in the previous card, I know that we had talked about when we were looking at the alchemical tarot, the Splendor Solace tarot, we were talking about why does there seem to be a Saturn influence in this card? And Idris pointed out that Saturn is exalted in Libra. And that means that Saturn reaches its peak influence in Libra. And typically what's associated with Saturn is limitation, restriction, time, things like that. So now, moving to the next card, there's the reversal of that. He's hung from that same limitation symbolized by the T. But if you take into consideration the fact that it's the Hebrew letter Mem, which is representative of water, when you see your reflection in water, it appears that you're upside down. And there's a connection between this card and the High Priestess, because if you look at the High Priestess, at the bottom right hand of the card, her gown begins to turn into water. So if you imagine seeing yourself in the water of the gown of the High Priestess, it might appear that you're upside down. So that's interesting. And let's see here. What do I have written down next? So since it has to do with Saturn, it also has to do with lead. And if you know anything about alchemy, lead has to do with the first phase of alchemy, the prima materia, where things are the densest, they're calcinated, and you have to transform it and sublimate that energy into its highest form, into gold. So I have a quote here from the collected works, and I forgot to get the paragraph, so but let's see here. Mercurius Sinex, Mercurius the old man, is identical with Saturn, and to the early alchemist especially, it is not quicksilver, but the lead associated with Saturn, which usually represents the prima materia. In the Arabic text of the Turba, quicksilver is identical with the water of the moon and of Saturn. So just like what I was saying about there being the connection between the High Priestess, which is the moon, and the water that flows from her gown, and this card being representative of Saturn. In the Dicta Bellini, Saturn says, "My spirit is the water that loosens the rigid limbs of my brothers." This refers to the eternal water, which is just what Mercurius is. So it's the beginning of the loosening of the lead in this card. And it's interesting, I pointed out the sulfur symbol because here the sulfur is upside down, and sulfur represents fire, whether it be the infernal fire in your body or in the earth or the divine spark. But here it's upside down. But if you look at the final card in the sequence of the tarot, the world or the universe, the dancer is making, her body is in the exact same position, except she's upright.
So sulfur, soul, has been flipped by the time you get to the end of the tarot sequence there. So it's almost like soul is completely inverted at this point, and then by the time you get to there, which also is the card of Saturn, it's back to being upright.
Right. And for Colleen, this is the loosening of hidebound attitudes, which is what you were doing with your doodling, as well as loosening people's attitudes so that they can have something new come forth. And very important. Jordan, go ahead. I do have your card set here, but first I'd like you to just talk about the Hanged Man.
Yeah, you bring up a point with the symbols. From my perspective with this card, I'll dial in to piggyback off of Nick first. The upside down fire would be inner fire. And then the right side up world fire would be external fire. So putting your energies inward versus putting your energies outward. My thing that's interesting between those four, the primary images we're utilizing, is not any of the symbols. To me, it's the gesture of the yoga pose crossed tree pose foot. And to me, I find it in my card, I did it this way, and it's a judgment call, but the sole of the foot I find should point to the left, which is back to the unconscious. The grounding is the unconscious. So I always find when the foot goes to the right, it's kind of maybe an unknown typo visually in a way, and it's not wrong. If you do your yoga pose backwards, you're just using the other side of the body. But I'll start there. It's interesting you mentioned water of the moon, Nick, and that's very important here to me because the moon does not have any light of its own. It's always light reflected from an unseen source. And I find that concept plays hard into this card as well. And a Hanged Man moment would be, as in water, afloat in clarity. So whether it's just those little ahas you have here and there, sunbeams coming through the leaves kind of way, or if you fully go into an ecstatic kind of eureka place that is a little more sustainable, typically they are temporary. And I find that's same goes with the lunation of the moon, where it's going to go through a phase and be full experience and then it will pass. So my first piece is actually always, I look at where is the right foot that crosses the leg pointing, because I find when the left foot crosses and points to the right, it doesn't feel so much appropriate, because it feels that the right side would be the masculine structure and the left side would be the feminine place of creation. Left side on this being closer to the left unconscious and the right side being closer to structure. And then he is in that meridian to unite them both in the middle. So that is a first point.
Do you think that perception is baked in, or baked in by civilization and society, or do you think it's natural for human beings?
Well, I'd have to go into a linguistic analogy to answer, because, for example, we're writing from left to right, but if I'm in Japan or Korea, I'm going top to bottom. And so I think the way we communicate in the imagistic language of letters, how we have that associative meaning put in play, would actually, I think, speak to that question more directly than an answer of one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay.
So perspective, it comes back to perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Raquel, do you want to talk about the Hanged Man?
A little bit. Nick, you always bring up Saturn in the cards, but my base of study is the Mystic Tarot. You know, I think Skip has this image, but in this card, as you can see, it's all about like earth, ground. It's not as much as water, you know, and you don't actually have the T, you know, seen in this image, but you can see, I think of this card as a 4 in you know.
Mhm.
So to me, it's all like you say Saturn, and I usually say Jupiter, you know, because
Yeah, that's
this
yeah.
for me is a symbol of Jupiter, like upside down, you know. And this is in this card, in this story, is Zeus, like because he puts Prometheus in this position.
Yeah.
So Zeus is also like a symbol of expansion and ruling.
Yeah.
And for me, this card is like more about the consequences of one's action in a more realistic, material way. Like, because you're gonna face the consequences of your own expansion in some level, you know. And this is kind of like this, because to me the Hanged Man is all about sacrifice, you know, but it's some type of sacrifice that you know why it's happening, you know. It's kind of like there's a teaching significance about it.
Yeah, I always mention Saturn, and it's kind of unique to the Rider-Waite deck or the Builders of the Addendum deck that I use. But I think Saturn is such a key player in the entire sequence of the major arcana, because, you know, if you really think about what are the challenges that one would face in development, it's primarily overcoming the limitations that are placed on you by being in space and time. And, you know, I think about, you know, I live out in the middle of nowhere. So I live somewhere where I can grow my own food when weather permits. And, you know, that's a process that requires a lot of patience, you know, really just sitting around and waiting on things to sprout, and then finally things to start giving you some food. And, you know, Saturn was always associated with agriculture in the same sense. You know, that's primarily dealing with the limitations given to you by time.
Right.
And, you know, here in this card, it's like to me, I think of the 11th card as being the exit from the kind of physical, external, extroverted world to things really being flipped on their axis right here. And now to where we've like completely descended into that world of limitation, of matter, of density. Now it finally starts to turn around. But in several of the cards, like I said, in the Justice card, she has T on her chest, at least in the card that I use. I don't think in the regular Rider-Waite deck that's a feature. But then in the Death card, there's also a symbol of Saturn. There are the several cards that have the planetary ruler of Saturn. There's the Saturn card, which is the universe or the world. So it's kind of all throughout the tarot.
Yeah.
And
I would like to add as a hand. I'll take it up one scale to a higher octave and give you guys both a handshake between your Jupiter and your Saturn. If you talk to Walt Amberstone in New York City, one of the founders with Ruth Ann Amberstone of the Tarot School, the Hanged Man is the Empress's son. And that then takes your Saturn and unites it with Jupiter and goes back to the universe, that from which all emanates, except he is the male emanator, that he is, in a sense, the man womb, afloat in clarity and empty. And I think one piece to add too, with you see yourself upside down on the water, what's interesting is water finds its own level, so that's relatively flat. But if you look at a concave spoon versus a convex spoon, it'll turn you upside down or right side up.
yeah,
You know,
Right.
so you get a mirror perspective that I find on the flat is a little deceptive. You kind of have to look at both to get a spectrum, even of dealing with the concept of reflection.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
so
let
cool that
me
you point out, like-
just interject here for a moment. I wanted to talk about these 4 cards because, wait a minute, what did I do? I did the wrong thing. These 4 cards, one of them is the card that Raquel was talking about, which is the one on the left here. And my point to make here is that we can get ourselves very wrapped around the crank about a specific interpretation of the cards. The reality is none of these cards, I don't think, have a tau in them, and none of them have a lot of the specific references that appear in the Golden Dawn and the Rider-Waite-Colman and so on. And so the point is that there's no, if you can't remember or you haven't read all about the Golden Dawn and all the esoterica about Aleister Crowley and the fight between him and Paul Foster Case and all that stuff, it just doesn't matter, because these cards still point at this archetype. And so just I'm just going to show this image. So this is the Mythic Tarot here, where Prometheus is having his liver eaten out every morning by the eagle. That's a myth.
Sounds pretty fun.
Right.
Well, you know, Skip, you bring up a great point, because if we shake the intellectual etch-a-sketch to get rid of facts and artifactual expectations, if you look at the top right, it's personal connection. All the rest of them have personal crossing. So in some way, shape or form, Tov, regardless Saturn or not, the card ends up being about building back in, or that is connecting with self. And then,
well, I'm going to address my perspective about this card in a few minutes. Let me just introduce these images so that I can put them off. So this is from the Mystic Mondays Tarot deck, and this one is from the Line Strider deck by Cielo Thompson. And this one is from the Spirit Song deck by Pauline Cassidy. And this card has the help for someone who's a newbie at tarot reading to know what she says, what this card is about. And so I just want to get that off the screen, but I wanted to show the Hanged Man for Raquel.
that was a praying mantis, correct?
Yeah,
on the bottom right.
Yeah, it's a praying mantis hung upside down.
Well, no, that fits. That's
Right.
one of the insect's most representative clarity and accuracy, even.
Yeah,
That bottom card makes me think of the Buck Owens song, "I've Got a Tiger by the Tail."
Okay, anybody else want to talk about their perspective, their general perspective about the Hanged Man, and then I'll put my perspective in, and then we'll go on. But Nicole, did you have any further thought you wanted to add here, or Annabelle?
No, not really. I'm just learning. I just went and got the Hanged Man card from the She-Wolf deck, because I wanted to look at it. And
yeah, I'm going to put that one up in a couple of minutes and read her description. So let's get to that in a minute.
The other thing that came through was that drawing that I did that I haven't shared, but that drawing that I did of the man.
Oh yeah.
While you're talking, if I flipped it upside down, it could be.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I told you already, you've got 40% of a tarot deck done there. Annabelle, do you have a comment about this?
Well, the question of gravity hasn't been mentioned, and out of just looking at the deck, it seems like everything else is upright, and this is the only one that sort of defies gravity in that way. And my deck, which is this sort of updated Marseille deck, he's dressed like a harlequin. He's dressed like, which is a kind of joker or jester. And yeah, so that hasn't been mentioned. Also, it has the number 12 on it. So I don't know what that means, being the novice.
Yeah. So. Well, I think that there's, Okay. Others, Susie, do you have a comment? I guess Patricia doesn't want to.
I do not.
Okay, let me just give my observation here very briefly, and then we'll move on. My observation is that this card is also about trauma and about dealing with complexity. Like the last hour before this class started, I'll tell you about my last hour before this class started, but I want to talk about trauma first, because we all face trauma in our lives. And the solution for that is to let the forces of the universe flow. And that's what the Hanged Man is about. It's about saying, time out, okay, I'm going to just let the forces of the universe flow, and something will come to save me. There will be a savior, or something will come from my unconscious that will save me. And I've had many examples, but when I broke my leg in the Marines and had my leg up in the air for 13 weeks, I was literally that hanged man. But after that, this first chance I got in a car and drove to meet one of my students, and he and I formed a company that ultimately that activity led to a public company. So, and it had nothing to do with the Marine Corps. and it allowed me to travel around the world and do lots of things. So you have to let things flow, but you also have to have the idea of the Hanged Man in your psyche, so that when things start to go sideways, you can just stop and take a breath. And I'll just tell you about my 1 hour before we started this evening, which was that I was racing to get my cards ready to show you tonight. And then I get an email from Nick saying he wanted to chat with me for 15 minutes before. And then two guys arrived that are going to change my my heating unit in my apartment. And then the brother of the owner of my apartment shows up, who's a Orthodox priest, and I have to interface with them, and I wanted to make a cup of tea and finish making the cards, and Nick wanted to talk, and I also wanted to stop in the bathroom, and so all these things were coming together in this 1 hour of time. And I said, well, I said to myself, that's very appropriate for the Hanged Man, because we all get into those sorts of crises. And I was certainly in a crisis like that yesterday in Colleen's session, because I'd spent like 2 weeks putting together that program. And while it may have seemed easy with only 25 people involved, but each one of those 25 people probably interacted with me at least 5 times, and maybe many of them 10 times. And
I don't think you wrestled with that bull. I think you danced with that bull, because the architect in me went, look at this. There's not a single thing out of order. Everything.
Well, there was a single thing out of order, which was that I didn't get Kathleen Poole's painting upright, but
actually, I thought about that, and I didn't say anything in the chat, but there was a whole, wow, that felt actually more appropriate with the Biden's mind, her foundation built. His mind is built up there, whereas on the right side, the ochreish plasma with no blood cells, there's no hemoglobin in that plasma, had no structure. So I actually liked it upside down. It was more appropriate for the demeanor of Biden, with an intellectual construct.
Well, the only thing I would say, Jordan, is what the Pakistanis say about some of their bric-a-brac that they sell, like jewelry boxes and such. They always build in a mistake, because they say only God is perfect, right?
And Hebraically as well, and in art, and I find that to be quite egomaniacal, because to say that says it was perfect in the first place. So I think there's a trickster in that.
Yeah, and meanwhile, all the people that built cathedrals in Europe in the 500 years ago, they always started with a cornerstone that was flawed intentionally.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole we can
Christ
go for weeks
Peter,
on that.
Christ said about Peter, on this rock I build my church. And Peter was by far not a perfect individual, I think.
Well, and actually that's a concept I utilize in my work, is you need a personal internal cornerstone to brace against.
Okay. So,
but that's another topic.
Right. But my point is, for praxis, for people that are listening, and we still have 24 people on YouTube that are listening live, for praxis, if you have a trauma in your life, and you will have, we all do, and they can be at all levels, from my last hour to breaking your leg to losing a parent and so on. All of those traumas can be dealt with using this archetype. In other words, go with the flow, don't get too upset about it. And, if people just understood this, I think young men coming back from combat wouldn't be committing suicide, for example, if they understood that, because and to be in combat is quite a traumatic experience, and you see a lot of ugly things, and we have 22 young men a day committing suicide, coming back from battle, and we have to give them some way to come down out of that crisis that they're facing as they're coming back to society. There's always the question, why didn't dear old dad talk about the war? And that's why, because you can't talk about it in a civilian society and have people understand what you've experienced. It just cannot be talked about.
I think that speaks really well to this card too, because it's
absolutely,
it's the Hanged Man, but like I said at the beginning, I also like to call it the suspended mind. But also, if you notice, he's hung by a noose, which means the mind. So, he's truly suspending his mind. And, if your mind is generating all of those problems for you and creating disenchantment with the way you see the world, suspending it for a little while would be
right. And who is the hanged man in the biblical tarot? Well, it's Jesus Christ. And if he has to be hung upside down, then it's St. Peter, because he was hung upside down when he was crucified.
And Nick made a very good point just now about the noose, because then if I go homonym instead of N-O-O-S-E, there's N-O-U-S, the French, and then that's Newman.
Well, that was what I meant, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, the noose. So hung by a noose, spelled either way, and it works the same. Suspension is a wonderful concept.
Okay. Other quick comments, and then we're going to move on to the She-Wolf and Starman Tarot.
Yeah, Raquel, I have all of the cards here in my deck that have symbols of Saturn on them, and I have 7 cards that have symbols of Saturn. And it's really funny that you, Jordan, point out the fact that the Hanged Man is the son of the Emperor, because in my deck,
the Empress. The
Empress. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
it could still work.
And it's 12 and 3 too. 1 and 2 is 3, and 3 is 3. So
yes, but look at this. In my card, which is quite different from everybody else's.
What deck is that, and what card?
It's
the Emperor.
It's the Emperor in the Bota deck.
Right.
But if you look at the way that the limbs are arranged, that's a great way to look at all of these cards. But particularly on this one, his legs make a cross, and his
Mhm.
upper limbs make
Right.
a triangle, and that's the sulfur symbol. So
And
sulfur
then,
is upright here, and then in the Hanged Man in this card, which also he's hung from the Tau, the Hebrew letter Tau. He makes the exact same symbol, but upside down.
and what's great about that is then he's not born of the emperor. The emperor is he didn't fall too far from that tree. The emperor is his established cornerstone. And then the empress would be that who gave birth to him.
Yeah,
So
well,
that
the emperor and the
sequences
empress are
work.
consorts.
Right, but I think he was born. The hangman has kind of a Iesus or Ichthyos quality as well with the water, where there is no father other than the capital F Father. So it's not a corporeal conception, as it were. It's more the spiritual induction or initiation of life into a body.
Yeah, I mean, it also kind of plays to the idea of what I was saying at the beginning of the connection between the high priestess and the hanged man, because even though the high priestess is the second card, it's technically the third card.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is
Right.
1 and 2.
If you count full as
So,
initial.
Nick, you have a question from Samantha, who's having Zoom problems today, and she says, Nick, can you speak more about how the noose means the mind? Also, all right. Well, that's her first question. Then she has another one, but can you speak more about how the noose means the mind?
Well, like Jordan pointed out, that you could spell it as if it were noose, like someone is hanged from a noose, but also there is the noose, which I believe the Greeks believe to be the connecting principle. It's the mind, but it's the connecting principle between the body and the spirit.
Right. And I think it's, I want to mention again, Da Vinci's Demons, which was a television series a few years ago. And the very first episode of Da Vinci's Demons in season 1 is called The Hanged Man. And literally they do hang a man in the episode, and he is an adept. So he speaks a formula that people would recognize that he was an alchemical adept right before they pull the lever on him. So
interesting. I'm going to have to check out that show.
Right. Now, Samantha has another one. Also, the emperor's facing is toward the past. The hangman is looking toward us in the present, and the emperor's self-assured posture comes from his status, whereas the fool's self-assuredness does not come from any status he has, no scepter or throne. It's from something unseen within. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, in my deck, as you can see, you can only see half of the emperor's face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck with the hermit, but not with the emperor. And that's one of the veiled symbols, but it refers to the idea that one can't look upon the face of God without being annihilated. And
Right.
it's the idea of the Ancient of Days. And there's also this, I mean, this is probably not the place to completely go into it, but there's this idea in the Kabbalah called the greater countenance of God and the lesser countenance of God. And always seeing one side of the face is representative of the greater countenance of God. But there's this idea that under the beard, there's always a smaller face. That's the lower half of the tree of life.
It's just interesting to me, Nick, that you're named Nick, and you know about St. Nicholas of Cusa?
Yeah.
Who is he's the patron saint of Switzerland. But
yeah.
when he saw into the face of God, he was so overwhelmed that he had a weird look on his face for many years, and finally had to cover it over with the Trinity, because he couldn't talk about what he saw.
Yeah, I'm well aware. I remember first reading about that, and I think volume 9 of the collected works, when Jung talks about the mandalas that he painted in his hermitage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else before we go on to the She-Wolf deck? Okay. Going on then. Okay, so we're dealing with 2 decks here. The She-Wolf deck, which is by Deveni Wolf, and the Starman Tarot, which is, let's see, it's by David de Angelis, who is the fellow who did the artwork for David Bowie for a couple of his albums. And so his deck is suggested by that. And the writing in these 2 I particularly like. And so, and this is also for you, Nicole, since you have the She-Wolf deck. So here's what Deveni Wolf says. The Hangman to Pisces, keys, stagnation, letting go, surrender, stubbornness, relinquishing, resignation. Artwork illumination. High above the barren desert, a woman is suspended, folded into herself, clinging desperately to a box that has written on it some Egyptian hieroglyphs. The box contains relics, things that are no longer alive and contributing dynamic energies into her life. Yet still she clings, perhaps run down with nostalgia, yearning, and longing. Light. It is time to let some things go, and we are ready, be it a relationship, career path, or even idea of ourselves and our character. The moment has come, and there is a genuine desire to cut the cord. Trepidation is natural, and there may indeed be some sadness to work through, but the overall momentum has reached maturation, and there is no turning back. Shadow, we don't want to go. We don't want to let go. We have invested so much of ourselves in what we are now being asked to surrender, and we can't possibly see beyond the pain yet, quite yet. It is true that these heart, mind, body, even financial investments are very real, very important time capsules of our lives. We expect to see a return, and if we don't, our instinct may be to grasp and cling and ensure something comes back to us. But rest assured, it wasn't a waste, even though it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. Choose to transform this into a learning experience, and it will be invaluable. Mantra, I let go of relics and embrace what is next. And I just want to mention that this brought to my mind a scene from the movie Top Gun, in which Maverick is encouraged to let Goose go after Goose is killed in a training accident. And he finally has to let him go and go on with his career. And that's the type of thing that we have to all face in our lives. Any comments about the She-Wolf deck here?
My first comment is always about the image itself.
Yeah.
There's like this image of a person in the sand, like
Yes,
kinda
the face.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the block has Egyptian writing, which stands out for me because it's kind of like this ancient knowledge that she's clinging onto, I think.
Yes.
Kind of.
And I would agree. The landscape's not lost on me. It's in a circle. There are 4 key mountain topographical changes. The front one has the wolf, but also almost either in a canthus leaf or a Uraeus cobra spread. But it feels like the eyes in the back in the landscape, and there's a hollow in the ground below. her, or actually below being. I liked it that this one went unisex.
Yeah. Other thoughts? Nicole, do you want to comment on this or not?
Well, I'm just like I love the juxtaposition of the other deck as well, because I'm really drawn to the other one now.
Okay, well, I'll get to reading that one in just a minute.
Like saying it's interesting, the different decks and the symbology, and I was thinking about it when Nick was talking, because I'm wondering, trying to learn this, the part that I find that sort of drags me is the timing of the other decks that were made and how the symbology changes. And I just wonder, because the she-wolf deck looks kind of ancient beside the Starman one now, because of the dynamism of the way that the collage is made, and they're totally different, but they're supposed to mean the same thing. And so
right.
I just, like the hangman, the she-wolf deck reminds me of like dreams that I might have had, that kind of imagery where I'm standing on a pillar. And I'm just wondering, like I've got a bit of dissonance, I guess, about how people translate the imagery, and the meaning obviously changes because we're in a different time. So I just,
yeah, go ahead.
And how we project into the images what we see, like the she-wolf deck's really ordered and very structured. The other one is quite random and sort of similar but different. Like just because it's still got the lightning and the clouds. It's still got that's
the beauty. That's the beauty of the tarot, because there are so many decks available, and there are thousands, and they all contain beautiful artwork, and so you can go buy yourself a new deck at Barnes and Noble. As I said, I'm now seeing almost the biggest section is almost tarot over the Bible section.
Yeah.
and so the the image is obviously you can be thinking about it for a long time, and thinking about why this image expresses the idea, and be a critic.
And also, like, it just the cross-cultural references, because that one's Egyptian, and then the other one has got some other type of writing in the background that seems more Middle Eastern. It's interesting how they change.
It's supposed to be a starman, a spaceman.
Oh, right.
Right, because this is the Starman tarot.
And and how that's upside down, but the other one's not. Well, it's kind of upside down, but not really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll read the Starman description in a minute, because it's quite good. But
well, Nick's concept too, the hanged being card, rather than being upside down, she's suspended. So there's the concept of the hang, but there's not the actuality of the hang.
Right, and Samantha comments that some say the tarot originated in Egypt. Difference in mythologies, different forms, but again, these are archetypes that have been with the human species forever and always will be. And so if you understand the tarot, you're going to understand a lot about how you need to live your life to have a successful life, a happy life. I personally think this one is very important, because I've been through a lot of trauma in my career, and if I didn't have this perspective of letting things flow until they come around again, you know, it would have been easy. You know, in 2008, one of my neighbors who owned the largest garden store in my area committed suicide when we had the crash of 2008. And, you know, I had suicidal thoughts at that time also. And I said, you know, perish that thought. I said to my unconscious myself, perish that thought. I want to stay around and see how this comes out. I want to see how this movie ends. And if I commit suicide, then I just give up, which he did. Okay, and this is a guy that had waterfront property, beautiful waterfront property in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm sure he had financial difficulties because of the crash, but you know, somebody's still running that garden store, and you know, so anyway, any other thoughts? Colleen, did you want to comment on this before I read this, or I'll read it and then you can comment on both images if you like? What's your preference? Can't hear you.
This is my first lesson, so I'm just coming at it, you know, very, very fresh. But this particular image I notice is suspended.
Yes.
So the act is not complete.
Right.
As I've noticed in the other cards, that the act is complete, but this is seems to be that there's more choice in this being, and the choice is to hang on.
Yeah.
But it could also be to take what she's hanging on to a different scene.
Right.
But that to me is the most telling about this, is this sense of suspension about something that's not complete yet, where all the other cards, the act has been done.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point about the trauma, is that you just have to accept that situation. When you have a trauma, you have to, you know, for me, I would go to the Naval Academy Chapel and just hang out there, waiting for something to come, and it did come. And so, you know, these things.
Nice choice of words, Skip.
Mm-hmm. Hanging out.
Hang out there.
Yeah.
Colleen, you made a wonderful visual verb analogy there. I love the aspect that it's not complete yet. So there's almost a preamble here that you're expressing. That I have not thought about that before, and that really is resonant.
Yeah, it really picks up on the next card as well, because in this card, it's like everything is upside down. The mind is completely suspended. But in the card that follows this one, at least in my version of the tarot, it's quite different from the Rider-Waite deck. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly here. Yeah, we've got the Grim Reaper here, but all around him, he has hands and feet cut off from a king and a queen. And it's like, before, the mind was suspended, everything was inverted and upside down. And now, as this begins to evolve, there's been a certain death to that which you hold dear and your standpoints.
Yeah. Okay, so Samantha asks, or comments, point I was making is the hieroglyphs could be related to Egyptian divination. So it's still about tarot, because many people point back to Egypt. And she says, please, if you share my comments, scroll up to what I said about different cultures. But I don't know what she means by that. But anyway, Alfonso asks a key question here, which is, what is divination? Do you want to respond to that, Jordan?
Divination would be the invocation of contents you discern from outside forces that move you without words, that you then translate into words, or the reverse of bringing the contents, your natural contents, in outside. And I would say in an overarching statement, it's simply divination is nature. Nature has no emotion. Nature has no order. Nature has weather. And so there's the natural motion within, to me, in divination that is moved, in a sense, inner water, that is touched by influence, but that expresses things that are archetypal, would I think in a preliminary one-stop sketch. I'd say divination is simply inner nature meeting outer nature in a conversation, in a dialogue, be it silent or verbal.
Also,
Right.
it's
Go ahead.
tarot and I Ching and all of that stuff. I mean,
Tea leaves.
Well, yeah, and I avoided the actual modalities intentionally there because I divine a tree. I will see faces or gestures, or it looks like it's moving forward, whether it looks like an Adam or an Aston Martin. And, you know, so to me, I try not to limit it, because I mean, I could look down and divine how I wrote the notes on my page tonight. And there's a certain compositional factor that I think is discerning of relationships and discerning of structures of influence, be they nebulous, abstract, or concrete.
Yeah. That's a good discussion, Jordan. I like that. Samantha goes on. She says, what I was trying to say is that it's not about the culture. It's about this woman clinging to dogma and her fear of allowing intuition to lead so she can individuate in a Jungian type way. And so, yeah, that would certainly be part of it. In other words, you have to divine or discern, you know, what is God telling you in this moment? When you have a trauma, you have to learn from it, and or you should learn from it. And so you're trying to divine what God is saying to you and these are ways that, as Jordan says, the cracks are where the light comes in, and so you have to look at the cracks in what you were thinking before and see where something new will transpire. I keep talking about the Mother Superior and the sound of music. When when God closes a door, he opens a window, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the same point, that if you have a trauma and you have a door slammed on you, there will be tomorrow. You know, the sun will come out tomorrow, as Annie said.
I would, yeah, exactly. I would also like to add to Samantha's comment, Colleen's "the action has not occurred yet." If you could go back to the scroll over where we can see the hieroglyphic, basically obelisk base, that could be a block. And depending on where you are in life, it could be divine wisdom from above being brought down, because it's above the cloud rather than below the cloud. So there also could be a divine intervention aspect here of bringing the word or words, wisdom, down to the earth that has not yet arrived. So I find it depends on the scale of where any of us are, and what rather than projecting what we pour into the vessel, because it's not always projection. There is the intent sometimes where you much prefer to juice a situation, so to speak, with a particular brand of what your psyche has to offer.
Well, and some things you may not want to give up. I mean, you're not going to throw away everything in your psyche and start over again completely. So you have to decide what has value to you. Now, Peter says it uses symbols that are inherent in our subconscious and bring those symbols or energies and using an apparently random selection system, present them to your conscious mind without any interpretation by yourself. So you are asking your subconscious what is happening. And Alfonso says, so divination is bringing knowledge from the unconscious to consciousness. I would say that is true. And you know, it's like a conversation, you know, in a conversation, your friend will say something that you say, oh yeah, I should be talking about that, or something like that, which you weren't thinking about 15 seconds before. But, you know, that's what just normal conversation does for you, is it lets you, it opens up your unconscious so that you can hear what it's saying. Pay attention, because it does have valuable stuff for you. Okay, can I go on to this now? Is that all right?
Let me add just one little short statement. I think from a divination, kind of boiling it down in my vessel, I guess I got T-boned a little bit. And if I get simpler with it, it's divination is literally to commune with the divine, within and about.
Precisely.
And I wanted to say one little
ahead.
thing.
Go ahead.
I really identified with what Samantha said, and I see myself in the She-Wolf card, because I went through trauma when I was 19 and I had PTSD. And I think it's really hard for a very young person to go through any kind of trauma, mostly because we kind of believe that we don't have life experience enough to believe that something else is going to come along. And tarot for me helped me see that life was going to go on, even though at that time I did not believe it. And I think that the Hanged Man, the very hard part of it is to believe, to believe in God or in something else higher than yourself, or to believe in your own path, that it's going to come along, even though at that time you are not strong enough to believe.
Right. And my point is Jung's point, which is you don't have to believe, you can know, because all of us, when we have these conversations about these archetypal energies, we know that this is right. And we've all experienced it one way or another. And that's the point. I mean, and Christianity and all religious systems point to that, but they've lost their purchase on modern human beings because they haven't been updated for modern categories of understanding. And so what we're trying to do here is to present another system that doesn't have all the baggage of traditional religions, but points at the same energies, and which are invisible, therefore they're divine. But we can't deny that they're there. They definitely are there. Yeah, go ahead, Colleen. You'll have to unmute though. Can't hear you, Colleen.
I'm sorry. Got some interruptions here at home. I'm maybe you've already commented on this, but on this card, I am impressed with the amount of organization that there is in the landscape.
Ah, yes.
Of
this one.
Of the desert, yes. And that, I don't think that should be overlooked, because it's, maybe you discussed this when I had to step out, but this organization, it's such as rather, I think it was you, Raquel, that was talking about when you were 19 years old, and realizing that there is an organization. When you first look at it, it doesn't look like there is. But when you see what has happened in this desert, there's a reflection on one side of it to the other. And some of it, well, it's just that it's a reflection of life, but it's very organized. It's been through a lot. It's been through windstorms, obviously, and perhaps a lot of other things as well. And it lands in a kind of organized system that we may not understand, but it is there for us to look at.
Right, and this is an extremely complex painting. I mean, this is not something that you just dash off in a day or two.
And Colleen, I'm glad you spoke to that. I mentioned that look at the circle on the ground, the two right and left topographical hill mountain features, the almost eyes and mouth on the other side. And then all of a sudden I go, wait a second, this is vertical and horizontal symmetry. So are we seeing in those two eyes and the black third eye in the back, what we don't see on the other side reflected on the wolf cobra piece up front, because it's symmetrical. They changed the shadow intensity, but it's more pink with the rainbow light coming on the left and not on the right. But those are the same mountain ranges.
Yes. Yeah.
Complete reflection. So I'm kind of wondering if we're seeing in the background far off what we don't see on the backside of this foreground piece.
Mm-hmm.
I see. It could be
like a 1, 2, 3, 4 mandala. It's like noon, 3, 6, and 9 circle of landform.
Yeah. So it's and it really reflects the fact that we have to see both sides and understand what's going on. Let me go on with the Starman, because I think this will be interesting also. First, I'll read the abbreviated statement, which is the hanged man surrendered to the unknown. Sacrifice your idea of power. Allow the pause to give you perspective. Attainment of the higher self and enlightenment are within reach. Reversed, your faith wanes. Break free from the stagnation. Tune into what you need. Listen to your inner voice. Renew your truth in yourself and in life. And then the longer version is with this caveat at the beginning: I now surrender, thy will be done. So, geez, we have somebody that has to go through this process in the US right now. I hope he listens to this. Okay, we are hanging in the balance. No matter how much conscious and concerted effort we are putting into moving things ahead, it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back, an incredibly frustrating and disheartening experience. Depicted here as an upside down theatrical confidence trickster are artful dodger and raconteur. The hanged man has lived successfully by his wits until now. Life has caught up with him, trapped, suspended upside down. He is seen hanging with a weight at his head, dangling over a precipice. The lightning that is stringing him up is symbolic of the power of nature to intercede. Life has a habit of intervening, showing us where we are out of balance, to wake us up and bring us back to our senses. The drive to survive, to push our limits, to succeed no matter what, trying to control life, pushing against life, very often results in life pushing back. The unconscious will often present the imbalance in our dreams as a warning, or if we repeatedly don't listen, it will stop us in our tracks. Our health suddenly fails, or we have an accident, so that we are literally forced to stop and take stock. In the artwork, the hanged man is losing the gold, the riches that have filled his pockets, the falling away of all that he has acquired and accumulated. Caught by lightning, he is in a precarious position, and should he shuffle, he'll very likely come crashing down to earth. Resistance is futile. When our lives are turned completely upside down by events, we are forced to surrender. It's no time to become impatient and negative, digging deeply into failings, but rather give up the struggle. There is little we can do out there in the physical world to shape our destiny. Instead, we must go within and make peace with ourselves. Hanging upside down, life is seen differently, akin to the practice of a yoga inversion. The blood flow is reversed, flowing back to the heart. We feel it differently too. Dangling upside down with lightning flaring at his feet, physical pain may also be a pathway into physical body and his vulnerability. Vipassana meditation, one of India's most ancient meditation disciplines, which uses the breath to scan the body, is powerful in reshaping the perception of pain, physical or mental, as merely as transient sensations. This too shall pass. The hanged man suggests you are being forced to take time out and look at your life from a different perspective, reconnecting with your bodily intelligence and heart, leaving external concerns, traveling within, question and ponder the great spiritual principles and laws that are in motion. Valuable lessons are there to be learned. Voluntary sacrifice, giving up the chase of worldly goods and experiences, significance and power may arise. The survival of the egoic self is handed over to the higher self for a selfless purpose. Reversed, your life has been suspended for some time. Efforts to change the circumstances of your life are repeatedly failing, and you are missing the opportunity to go within and listen to your inner voice, which is being drowned out by all the drama. Journey within through meditation to receive insight and renew your trust in yourself and the process of life. And oh, by the way, that's blocked if you're taking drugs. So, any thoughts here now?
I think this card represents better the idea of Jupiter upside down because you're losing like everything material, and usually the expansion of someone's life is throughout, things and money and material stuff, and the Hanged Man is an indication that you're gonna lose some stuff, but mostly to maintain what really matters, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it also takes me back to the conversation that we had, I think, on the Wheel of Fortune. But I was just sitting and thinking about the same thing, about how Jupiter plays into this card as well. And do you have the new Mythic Tarot queued up, Skip?
Yeah, that's what I was showing earlier with Prometheus.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I that just goes to my point. I was just going to say, you noted that Zeus was the eagle above him, and that Zeus put him there. But I was saying something about Saturn, and it just occurred to me that Zeus is the sun that escaped the wrath of Kronos, of Saturn.
Right.
I would say on this also, notice the gold up by the foot touching the calf. So there's currency and connection.
Right. Yeah, it's a very powerful card.
The snake wrapped around the leg and the gold. I just noticed the gold too. And this guy looks like he's pretty he's not unhappy about the fact that he's in that position. He's kind of, he's not, he's looking pretty, and the skulls, the decoration on the body is really resonant of there's a lot of guys around now and they all get these tattoos and everything. Everybody's into this stuff about the body, decorating your body and all these riches and the gold and the cars. symbol on the cards is like the triangle. What are they like? Are they those chunks of gold or something? What are they? I thought they were cards, but they're not, obviously. I think they're like chunks of gold.
Yeah,
Like ingots. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's what they are. And coins.
And
Well,
that,
if that's a triangle, then that's fire. Yeah, there's no line across it because actually that's air. Because if a line across it would be fire.
And there's more than one snake
Yeah.
here. There's a snake here and there's a snake here. And
oh, is it?
yeah, here and here. There are two snakes.
Right.
And probably there's more.
He also have a necklace of an Egyptian symbol, an ankh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's got an ankh there on his necklace. It's defying gravity, but not picky.
It's interesting.
It's
Go ahead.
amazing. Yeah.
It's interesting
just so
that he's
dynamic. Sorry.
No, go. That was beautiful. Go.
But it's just so dynamic how everything's pointing, and he's still got that center line with the light that it's behind, and that hook. I don't know what that is, but I'm
looks like a
guessing
bell.
that it's an ancient thing. Yeah, like with the, but it's on you. Yeah, a bell. Yeah.
It's not lost on me that he is hung by natural energy. He is hung by the lightning.
Yeah.
He's not being shocked at all. This is the lightning it's suspending him. It's holding him magnetically.
Yeah. He's cool.
He's very much not unhappy.
Right.
Yeah, this has probably been my favorite card from the Bowie deck.
Yeah.
I want those leggings.
Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, my friend Eva Ryder got this deck and tried to send it back, and then she couldn't, and because she didn't like the images at first. But I find that both the discussion of the card and the images are growing on me very much so. Mm-hmm. And the same is true of Devani Wolf's deck. You know, that at first I didn't particularly like that deck, but as I've looked at it, I do like it. And I also like her descriptions very much. So, okay.
I just looked up the Starman deck. It's not that expensive. It's only $15 to buy it.
Yeah. No, it wasn't bad.
I'm going to get one.
No, it's cool. It comes packaged in a really cool packaging.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, the package in itself should be up for an award. That box. Yeah, that box design was a little less than simple. It has a lightning on it, and you pull the box open at the lightning strike. And then you can get at the cards. Yeah, it's
at the drawer of the cards. It's really, really cool deck. And let's see. And Dushan says, sacrifice your idea of power. There is little we can do in the physical world to change our destiny. This too shall pass. Well, I hope you'll write to our president and pass that along to him.
I'm going to have to leave. This has just been wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'll be back next Monday.
Yeah.
Great to see you, Colleen.
Yeah. Next Monday, Colleen, just so you are forewarned as forearmed, next week, the card is death. And the death card in the tarot does not mean physical death. It means the end of something. It can mean physical death, but
and actually, Colleen, you're familiar. You have an astrology background too, right?
Very, very shallow, really.
You might, as you're moving into it, I wanted to keep it fresh, but death being about transformation. You can also look at the 8th house in astrology and Scorpio, and then also Pluto. And I find that those in tandem, the sex, death, rebirth, birth and death as one thing, are kind of wonderful prompters to keep it broad to dial into the card.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And your comment on this, your comment on the action is not complete. That the visual verb that you picked up on there, I hadn't seen, and it was just once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. That was, thank you.
Thank you. I do not own a deck. What
That's
would
even
you?
better. Well, Skip will tell you, you don't want my recommendation because I'll lead you astray in my own bias. I would think Toth or the Alchemical Tarot by Bob Place are two of my favorites. I'd lead you to my deck, but I don't know that as a starter deck, it would be the right way to go.
Yeah. So,
Colleen, I would offer to, I would say there's an organization in California. I think they're out of, they're out of Los Angeles. They're called the Builders of the Addendum, and you can order their tarot deck, but they send it to you uncolored.
Right.
So you color it yourself, and that's a really wonderful process because you can really add your own creative flair to it, but also it really helps to digest the information. You know, it gives you an immediate personal relationship to the cards. So it's a really fun process to go through.
this is that deck, the Bota deck, Builders of the Addendum.
Yeah.
Is it Addendum or Addendum? Is it?
I always say Addendum.
Okay.
Addendum.
I don't know if I'm right, but
I'll go.
I say
tomato.
it like I am.
I'll just say tomato.
I don't speak Latin, so but let me just show.
Latin's hard because it's a dead language. There's no one to talk to.
Very few, but here's an example, Colleen, of how the cards come.
Yeah.
So it becomes sort of like a adult coloring project, but
yeah, but what a wonderful way to get to know the image.
Yeah, and they definitely do teach you when you buy this deck, which is only $8. They teach you what the colors should be and why they should be the way they are.
Okay.
So that's
so wonderful. At 88 years of age, I get to take on something so new.
That's so cool.
I do. It's wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being with us.
Yeah. Okay, so I think Patricia has been waiting for me to bring up the fifth tarot deck, and I do love this image from the fifth tarot, and I want to share it with you. But I would also say that I'm not real wild about the fact that the makers of this deck changed the name of the arcana, right? The archetype, because I mean, look, you can make a deck of cards that uses any words in the dictionary, but because tarot readers have been using a certain formula for 600 years, there are tarot readers everywhere in the world that know that formula and can therefore pick up a new deck if it uses that formula, and do readings from it, divinations. But when you play around with the formula, then it throws everything into confusion. So you might as well be teaching a whole different kind of divination, it seems to me. But what's your opinion, Jordan?
No, I respect what you said, and I wholly disagree, but I'm also in a unique position, being a lifelong tarot reader, that one of my, when I'm at national conventions, one of the things my joke is I can sight read anything. And part of it is because I will read a tree, or I'll read parking spaces or clouds, which becomes more of an oracle. but I love taking decks that I've never used before and doing a professional reading with them, just out of the box, sight unseen. But then again, I am so steeped in the structures that literally I'm, in a sense, multilingual with tarot. So your point is good that you always want to expand, but if you go too far, too fast off of your primary structures, that's how I find when the confusion enters. And I think that's because you've transcended structure to get into sloppy or completely unknown territory where you don't know how to drive anymore. So it depends, I think, on where you are as a reader and where you are as emotionally, and also where you are intellectually with just your tarot knowledge in general. How well you can basically race the car or just drive the car.
Yeah, as I'm thinking about advising people about doing a deck of their own, however, I think of it from an executive businessman point of view, and it's not clear that you'll make very many sales if you have a deck that somebody has to study your whole specific book before they can use it. I think you're an exceptional intuitive, Jordan, and not everybody is that.
And I'll tell you, the book never comes out of any given tarot box for at least 6 months to a year. I don't want it. Because to me, it's like artwork. It graduates from the artist. It has to speak on its own. It's like your 19 or 21-year-old and they go out and one of them fails and is unemployed and can't make it to save their life. And the other one does the work, sets things up and makes it happen because they have a clear vision. Even if they don't know what they're doing, they at least do the actions. So I find that the artwork itself, until it stands on its own 2 feet, for me, I won't touch the book. I just won't, because I don't want to hear words that are trying to shore it up and complete concepts that the painting or the image did not even sometimes address. Because I find there's a lot of talk in the sky, so to speak, where they're saying lots of things. But like Jung said, you are not what you say you're going to do. The book does that. You are what you do. The cards are that. So that's really where I dial into, I think, all that. So, for example, I broke my rule when the 5th tarot I opened and that stopped. I'm like, no, I have a rule. And that's, I think, my rigidity. I do, though, think, to speak to your executive piece, that's important if you're doing your tarot deck as a business venture. But the most important thing for me personally, after, decades of tarot, when I did my own, it was a 3-year process, rite of initiation.
Sure.
And I've gone through 5 pivotal life transformation, PTSD, trauma, one was near death events that up to that point, nothing had ever affected me that intensely. But 3 years of sustained transformative initiation, 2 words, hardcore. And it's a very, very important hardcore. You get to know yourself. You get to know a lot of things you don't want to know about yourself and make some besties with some beasties. But I think so, whether you're going to sell the deck, you're right, as an executive, as a business person, you want to make sure that there's a clarity in both image and text that are 2 versions of the same story. But if you're just doing it as a rite of initiation, I think it's just as important. And in fact, I would recommend that someone take on that sustained a series of work, because most people who start tarot decks don't finish them. And part of the attrition process is there's just so much work. 78 consistent community inhabitants of cards.
92 cards now.
Well, the 5th tarot, right. And,
right.
What I suggest is when people start a tarot deck is to do a majors only first and get a handle on,
sure,
are they exhausted?
So
after, or are they ready to keep going?
Yeah, Dushan asks you, Jordan, how long did the PTSD last?
From age 4.5 to age 47, when I entered brain spotting and took 2.5 years and got down to it. That was the initial. It was surgeries when I was a kid. The other one, though, was almost dying on a mountain, Mount Democrat, at 14,363 feet above sea level. Day dressed in shorts and a t-shirt in 19-degree weather, when it had been 74 hours before. So that PTSD lasted 6 years, and there was sustained work on my part I had to just get away from it.
Yeah.
So there have been varieties of them, but I find that there's a shock factor to the lasting. You, in a sense, need to own that you need to be kind of quiet with yourself about it and not go right back into it, unless you do it right at the time, where it's wise in time. So in terms of how long it lasted, I still have after effects, but now to me, they're influences that I utilize for my actions rather than being negative stalls, if you will, of scar tissue internally.
Okay.
I don't think I answered truly fully. It's a very big question. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, I think
it goes on a case-by-case basis.
In my
it's lifelong.
experience, yeah, it's lifelong. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how I would answer that question.
I kind of had to think my way out loud to get there. So
yeah. Okay, so in honor of Patricia, I'd like to read the Cosmic Man now that we've told all the reasons why we don't like this deck, which I do like the deck, but for a variety of reasons, and I have criticisms of it too. And so that so think about what this image means as I read this. Yeah, I'll be quick. On the tree of life between Geburah and Hod, or strength and splendor, we find the Cosmic Man. The Cosmic Man walks this path as a balanced being, influenced by the golden ray from the heart of God and the silver ray from the heart of the goddess. With these divine male and female principles, the cosmic traveler finds Earth to be the perfect breeding ground to express and experience love. The cosmos depicted in the background represents the ocean of possibilities available to the Cosmic Man. As the 12, XII, the Cosmic Man connects with Mayan cosmology as the last vestige of our earthly sojourn. There are depictions of men ascending and descending at several Mayan sites and in their sacred codices. As we move toward the 13, we come to a point where mankind will choose to reclaim the cycle of 13 and move beyond all that is to create anew. It is said in prophecy that when we return from the 12/60 Gregorian calendar to the 13/20 Mayan calendar, we will be ready for all the gifts from the cosmos. According to Greg Braden, author of Awakening to Zero Point and the God Code, letting go of old pains and paradigms changes our DNA. We rewrite our DNA through healing as we open up the new expressions of our divine essence. The Cosmic Man's path becomes a free expression of otherworldly thoughts. He sees all that is as the dream that it is. The Aborigines of Australia say that the dream is our daily existence. The Cosmic Man understands this. He knows that we are spiritual beings dreaming this physical existence. In Eastern philosophy, the body is illusory. Like the yogis who understand our true essence, the Cosmic Man sees the greater truth. He knows we are all multidimensional beings, closer to the divine. The Cosmic Man's approach to life is peaceful, much like the yogis. His is a life of service. From his perspective, all he encounters is seen as a path toward enlightenment. Becoming lighter and less earthbound, he is able to help others who are stuck in third dimensional ways of thinking. All other efforts to control his reality are ill-spent. His life and desires are not of this world. Knowing his divine spiritual essence, He holds in balance the compassion of the mother and the benevolence of the father. As the cosmic man takes time to reflect upon life, he pierces through veils, becoming a guide for others with the peace and harmony that emanate from him. It is important for us to let go of old perceptions and to take time through meditation and contemplation to expand and sustain the new reality. When we get out of the way, the flow of the cosmic energies creates in our life. The entwined DNA suggests a reconstruction of activation of new codes. The planetary system in the right looks like a golden mean in action, a thought or idea being born. Both of these images suggest greater multidimensional gifts that occur with the perception and expansion of the cosmic man. All the gifts of the ethers found in the lotus suit become available to the emerging cosmic man. The lotus suit being the fifth suit that is in this fifth tarot deck. Okay, comments? Go ahead, Raquel, did you have a comment?
I was just gonna say that it looks like a DNA
Yeah.
figure,
Definitely.
but like, and kind of an eclipse happening, like really. I don't know. I think that this card being like also related to Neptune is, even though the card itself is kind of related to Pisces, it's kind of more information for me, because the amount of creativity and possibilities of creation that comes with Neptune is different than seeing through the perspective of Jupiter or Saturn, you know?
Yeah.
That's a great point, especially I think that because Neptune is a higher octave of Pisces in a way, astrologically, and I would say that Neptune would then fill the watery Pisces. So Pisces provides this vessel, and the DNA there, he's swimming behind it. I don't know if they want him to swim through it, but there's kind of, he's in the space between. I hadn't noticed the eclipse back there on the right, and that actually is pretty powerful detail.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the limitation of light, I think.
Good call. Yes, the limitation of light. I like that.
Yeah, that makes me think about the concept of the privatio boni.
Mm-hmm.
Why, Nick? Tell me that.
Does that mean the absence of light, the privation of good, the privation of light?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Nick. Because then the only light, I mean, if it looks dark the old adage, if it looks dark all around, look again. Maybe you are the light.
Wow, that's really, yeah. This guy's integrated. He's pretty sort of diving down into the depths, but out into space through the DNA strand. It seems it just really brings through health. What's that symbol in the top left-hand corner, that three-pronged?
That's Neptune.
I've seen that.
That's the
I've
trident.
seen that.
That's the trident, and it's a symbol for Neptune.
Is it?
It's
Yeah.
Neptune.
Yeah.
It's interesting. They have
Right.
Neptune. They have the spiral. The bottom left is, I can't get the zoom to stay. I don't know the bottom left. And then the top right.
The bottom left is supposed to be the Mayan, from the Mayan glyphs.
Okay.
Right.
In this deck.
And then the spiral would be more of the caveman level cave painting, similar concept glyph.
I
That's a
don't know.
question. I don't know.
I don't know of any cave paintings that were spirals, but
Well, petroglyphs, not caves. So that era of prehistoric in a way. It's very Aboriginal. The spiral, that one right there. To go to Nicole's land, you can get the Aborigines in Oz. I don't know what the top right is. If it's not a cursive Capricorn. I have not seen that squiggle, and it doesn't have a bar, so it's not Libra. It's a half a heart in one way, but I don't know what that symbol in the top right actually represents.
Kind of looks like an omega, maybe.
That's a possibility. So, yeah, it leaned and skewed. Yeah, a little bit.
I also just want to say, I'm sorry if you guys see me just cracking up over here. I'm eating a bowl of cereal and I keep having this really trickster idea coming up that I just want to slurp my milk into the mic and act like I have no clue that you guys can hear it.
Well, then there's your dressed like the jester hangman. That's awesome, Nick. Well, we like you, so I don't think we'll get misophonia from the noises.
You've gone to the other side.
Yeah.
Nick.
The tables have turned.
So it so happens that I have the page for the explanation of what the different parts of the card are.
Oh, cool.
In this. Wait a minute. I guess I have to turn my cloaking off for a minute. Okay, so this is the page. I'm going to just read it to you. In the upper left is the planetary or astrological sign. In the center it is the Roman numeral number is numerology reference. The right top is a star symbol, whatever that is. In the lower right is the sacred symbol of Mu. In the middle is the card title, of course, and in the left lower one is the Mayan glyph.
What was Mu? Like, you mean friction equals Mu equals 0, frictionless? Mu, physics, Mu, Mu?
I have no idea what.
How is this? Is it spelled Mu? Or
yeah, it's spelled Mu, and I have no idea what they mean by it.
Yeah, because that's not the symbol for Mu. I'm gonna have to look at that. I hope there's not a typo.
Sacred symbol of Mu.
All right. Well, that's a different system than physics. Okay. There's probably some overlappage.
Yeah, I'm just.
Is it capital M-U or is it lowercase m-u?
Both letters are capitalized.
Okay.
Okay. Here. Let me. I think I've got it here. Was a place. Okay. Mu was both a time and a place before deception. It was a place where humanity lived in perfect peace and harmony, where the spiritual laws of the universe were still honored and upheld. For this reason, we chose to incorporate these sacred symbols of Mu into the major arcana of the fifth tarot. And then they refer me to Appendix E. So apparently in Appendix E here, okay, so Appendix E has, I'll uncloak again. Okay, Appendix E has a whole chart of the symbols of Mu. Okay, so it's rather complex. So that would be learning still another system.
So is it sacred symbols, plural of Mu? Mu being a
there's
system?
one. There's
right.
a different.
Okay, so it's not a symbol, singular. It's symbols, mean a
symbols.
hieratic language.
Yeah, and
imagistic language. Okay.
Yeah, they say in the description, the sacred symbols of Mu are taken from ancient writings that refer to the motherland of Mu, or Lemuria. After the cataclysmic events that caused the sinking of Mu into the Pacific, her memory was kept alive through these symbols, many of which can be seen in the glyphs of ancient indigenous cultures around the world. Okay, so.
Do they mention anything about Pleiadian peoples or?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, Jordan. I've got a book that's an inch thick, and I've read two pages of it so far. So that's the best I can give you at the moment. Okay, I'm going to give you your card next. Give you a chance to give you a chance to
sorry, I
defend
forgot
it.
I even had it back. I'm kind of hanging, man.
Could I say a little, this is Annabelle, could I say something about that last card though?
Yes, of course.
And unfortunately, I have to bring in the, this current political situation we're in. Not long ago, I listened to a writer named Arundhati Roy talk about sort of the state of the world.
Yeah.
And at the end of her talk, which lasted about an hour and a half, in the last maybe 5 minutes, she mentioned as an aside that on April 5th of 2020, and we know what was going on April 5th of 2020, the president, so the sitting president, if we can call him that, signed something called the Artemis Accords. Has any of you heard of these? The Artemis Accords?
No.
It's with 45 nations. It's outside of the UN. The UN is not in favor of this. It follows on some accords that were signed in 1965. And they have to do with the moon and outer space. And what these accords say is that these nations, led by the United States, I'm putting quotation marks around the United States because it was that president, signing it and initiating it, can send corporate entities, profit-making companies into space to gather whatever they find, minerals or whatever you want to call it, materials that they find from outer space, bring them back and make profit, right? So it's a capitalist enterprise.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it represents to me, besides one of the really mega horrors of this current administration, is that we are so connected to space. And one of the first things you, Skip, said about, I think it was the very first card you brought out, was that the moon doesn't have any light of its own, it only reflects light. And I felt like some of that same message was being spoken about this last card, about light and darkness and where it originates from, and, or is generated or something like that. And with that DNA interweaving, I guess I could put on camera here because I'm making these gestures, with that interweaving DNA thing, we are connected to everything that's out there. And this government knows that.
Sure.
Boeing, Raytheon, you name it, they know this, or DuPont, or the people who are working with it, Pfizer, Merck, and people who are working with substances and want to do things with them that are not just moon rocks, right? But that are actually going to be, going to make some people wealthy.
Sure.
I'm going to make some corporate. So I just wanted to say, kind of put that in there because I felt like a lot of these subjects were skirted around as that last card was being discussed.
That's a wonderful point to bring up the shadow side of the Hanged Man. Not even necessarily negative, but going into and I think I was talking about the moon has no light of its own. It's light from an unseen source. But that's important because to look at the Hanged Man from the perspective in context of from a place you can't see or from unseen locations, dark side of the moon thought in a way, that's a very important place to till. And I think that's one of those places where you're going to look around and go, you need to hope you are the light to be there, to stay, in a sense, intuitively hydrated or psychologically hydrated, because you're not going to get anything from anything else there. It could be very lonely. But you're right, because then things are hidden here. There's kind of that's the place where people sweep it under the carpet, or actually don't even show you there's a room to have a carpet.
Sure, there are lots of things that happen in the government that we never see or know. I consider myself fairly well informed, and I've never heard of the Artemis Accords until you just mentioned it.
And I looked it up. Once I heard her speak about it, I thought that's a kind of wacky left-wing radical, something. But I looked it up; it's perfectly legitimate. I mean, it's a real thing.
Oh yeah.
It's one.
Yeah,
of the
I
real
certainly
things.
saw a news article not that long ago about something to do with. It sounds like exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember how it was worded, but what I remember from it was essentially that some bill had been passed where people were given the go-ahead to start mining on the moon or doing something like that, which was just like completely absurd to me. But I guess
Well,
they're going to do that. That's why Elon Musk and all these guys are spending any time on space, because they want to make money on it.
Well, and another impetus of it too was to allow privatization to occur, because prior to that it was illegal. I mean, NASA's NASA, and if you went up, you're going to get squashed so fast. So there was the literally tort law to allow private companies to do what was previously only a governmental or gubernatorial process.
Right, and they've obviously done it better than NASA has done.
Because it's for profit. They have to have results, otherwise they go out of business.
Yeah, and I haven't seen NASA land a rocket back on a barge yet.
Well, that was impressive. The reusable piece.
Okay, so do you want to talk about your card, Jordan?
Yeah, and there are a couple of short passages, even from my book, that are maybe 4 lines each, 2 of them that I think might be good to go with it. And so...
all right, so we'll show, this is from Tarot of the Mysterium from Jordan Hoggard. So go, Jordan.
Can you zoom in a little bit on the
card?
card?
Can you zoom in
I
a
will,
bit?
surely. Yeah.
Because there are some key details on this one.
Okay, go ahead.
So first off, let me go back into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you look, there are 8 wraps of the rope, and then 1 on his foot and 1 hanging down. It's kind of a physics principle. You don't need a knot if you do enough of a pulley. So the concept here is effort's not what's important. It's clarity as to how to distribute forces. So all of his weight probably weighs about 8 pounds, maybe, on that last piece. So then you see Raquel had brought up the Ankh, the necklace that was, and you mentioned defying gravity in the Starman. His Ankh, the symbol for everlasting life, has fallen out on the ground. His ropes are loose, symbolizing more of his awareness of his connection and connections between the energies of his hands. His foot is not in pain. It's just postured in the tree. And if you look at the tree, it's kind of mimicking him. In a sense, it has the same kind of leg over to the left gesture. So the tree in itself is what he grew from. If you scroll into his waist and you scroll into the knothole in the tree, the symbol on his waist is my abstraction of the Egyptian hieroglyph for fabric, which is 4 cut wheat stalks paired together on a common base, which is wheat was the symbol for fabric of Egypt. And if you look then into the right, the knothole in the tree, you're going to see the Ouroboros, the snake bite in his tail.
Oh,
and you're going to see the same symbol of fabric, except wrapped around to meet up with itself in a circle. Those 4 vertical bars, if you melted that and treated it like rubber and turned it around, that's then the symbol of self to me in this deck. And then the symbol of the community or the larger self, the collective unconscious, would be the fabric on his waist, which connects his upper to lower. Again, the sacrifice, he's losing all his coin, or some of it. But what's interesting is, where's it coming from? Because I intentionally put no pockets on him. This is a guy who on one side cannot have anything up his sleeve. And on the other side, there's not a whole lot past that little piece of his forearm to hold anything. So this to me means, in a sense, Les, what happens with trauma, we're kind of bleeding some psychic currency. We're having pain. We're having loss. And part of that loss is to empty, to then refill from the wisdom of the experience of that which comes back to fill the cracks. So to read just 2 short pieces here. When the hangman speaks, I am the hanged man. I love my spirituality, my dreams, and my psychic abilities. You might call them intuition. That's cool. Psychic, though, for me, feels to get more to where they are at. There is no door or portal for me to go through to sense them. I swim in them naturally at will. And then another just concept here, if I just kind of truncate to start in the middle of a paragraph. 12 mirrors. If I mirror 12, it's 21. They both equal 3, obviously, because they're a mirror. But 12 hangman, 21 the world. 12 hangman, infinitely inward. 21 world, infinitely outward, and feel everything around you. With a hangman going infinitely in, you can feel chords struck that resonate throughout your whole being. Peaceful. This is a place of suspension. This is not life or death. Here, resistance has stopped. Illumination is available. Any thoughts on this card from the group or those words?
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought up the 12-21 thing, because that helps to drive home what I was trying to establish earlier, the connection between this and the world card.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I went to that piece, especially because you brought it up, and I have to laugh. I forgot it was in my book. So
Yeah, you have 12 coins, I see. And is it 12 infinities also? No.
Yes. Yeah, there should be matching, one of each small and one large.
I think you've got 13 infinities.
Infinity should always be greater than the...
Well, you've got more when you start counting the gold ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go back and count. I don't remember being numerically intentional on the pile. It was more of a compositional, okay, that looks okay. If they actually do have a certain number that equal 12, or some way they work that way, it's actually just going to be something that just kind of happened in the creative process by circumstance.
Yeah, right. There, I count 13 black ones and 3 gold ones there. So for whatever.
Yeah, so there's not a relation. Yeah, there's not a relationship there.
But the Ankh is clearly there. Okay.
I like how he's a very muscular, very kind of I don't know, looks like kind of a man's man.
Yeah, he's like a gymnast. I mean, this is someone who can play with his own body weight, which is actually a really good concept of personal clarity. If you can play with your own unbearable lightness of being, the other turned side of that, he's a gymnast. He would sit there and flip and push ups till he was just bored, not till he couldn't go anymore. So that ability to play with matter, the ability to actually play with your own body weight. There's a piece of that does something to the mind as well. So that's a good point with the muscular piece. He's not Arnold Schwarzenegger bodybuilder size. He's like shy of gymnast size. So you kind of get You get the gymnastics rather than bodybuilding.
Yeah, it looks like just out of the frame, there might be a Ferrari that he just drove up to this tree. And
yeah, he's got a little bit of that.
Okay, so I want to get a chance to show the other cards I've teed up for the night, so that because
Let's just quickly, anyone else have any other comments on the image? Or
I think there was the Ouroboros in the tree, like it's the tree that keeps him hanging, but in some way is the tree that comes with the element that can save him in sort of way, like, or cure him, like nature, like it's a symbol of nature, is the way of a curative way, I think.
It's interesting you brought that up, because in another paragraph, he was actually born from, he's the emperor's son, but he came from that tree. So in a sense, that's his origin through her. So in a sense, the tree of life, in a way, may have grown out of him after she gave birth to. So there's kind of a two-way street there that kind of breaks a circle, not so much linear. So I'm glad you brought that up with the nature, capital N.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let me share with you the Splendor Solus, and that's the next one. And probably I can read through what it says about the Splendor Solus here, because there's not obviously a hanged man there, at least not that I saw in the image. Let me
suspended vessel process, but yeah, let's see what the book says.
Yeah. All right, so here's what the book says. I am the turning birds, inner alchemy of the hanged man, spirit of the mighty waters. And they're specifically focusing also somehow on this vessel here. Okay, I am artisan of the stable intelligence, which has the virtue of consistency, firm ground of being of eternal truths, holding secure the worlds of ephemeral change. All Mars Mercury experiences in the four worlds are woven into my alchemical path. I am the initiate's way, blessed by Jupiter's priestly gift of the reigning waters. The calm initiate to be contemplates my turning as a meditation. Through yogic enactment, the suspended mind raises the imaginalizing thought of the heart above the isolating rationality of the brain. A new perspective is born. By the power of my pearl white degree of heat, all darkness is expelled from the earth, and so it lights up. My three birds raise in turn the colors of the alchemical stages, making every black thing white and every white thing red. Earth is subtilized, taking on the color of a ruby. Dear alchemist, let consciousness be so raised and supported from above by the eternal verities. Walk upon the firmament on high, like the Egyptian initiate of old. Okay, so that's what they said. Now, just because I want to put it on people's videos so that they can also copy it, I want to share with you something else that's in this particular book, which is the Tarot. So this is the Kabbalistic tree, which Nick has shown us before, but I don't know that everybody got a good slide of it. So here it is. They gave it to us in this book, which is very convenient, so that you can refer to it not only by the numbers that relate to the numbers in the suits, but also they give the numbers of the paths of the major arcana. So if you want to stop your video and do a screenshot, you'll have it too. Okay, that's enough of that. How about this guy? Here's, I guess before I go to this guy, I should, because what I have here is the Deviant Moon guy.
Oh, sweet.
But,
I love these cards.
But
These
before
cards.
I go there, let me also show you what's in this book, which I rather like. And that is here they're showing the four worlds, which are in the four different colors throughout the book. And again, the tree, which I just showed, and each one of these symbols is a tree, and so each tree is for one of the suits. And as I think I pointed out earlier, if you look here in the minor arcana, what they've done is on every page of the minor arcana, they've given the tree of life, but this triangle here represents whatever card this is, which is the Six of Wands. So the reds are the wands because they represent fire, and so the triangle is on the sun in this particular tree, and so that's what that means. And so if you learn that system that Nick was teaching us a couple of weeks ago, and you have this deck, then you can pretty easily read the tarot out of this deck. Just mention
can you show us the Five of Wands in that?
Sure. Okay, so the Five of Wands is essentially the same, except it's on Mars. The triangle is on Mars.
Let me see the bottom of the frame. Interesting. So there's one of the images in that, to me, looks like it's where they got the idea for the Five of Wands, and it's not that one. I don't know which image it is in the Splendor Solace series, but if you look at the Five of Wands, it's a bunch of, I think it's all young men outside fighting over wands, and they're all wearing like, yeah, it's not that one.
Okay, but here they're going to war.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense for the Five of Wands certainly, but I'm thinking about in the Rider-Waite deck, the Five of Wands.
You're talking about the five young men with the tunics, basically catch as catch can, trying to form a star, learning to play with the staff, but very disorganized, still no structure, kind of youth and puerile. That one?
Yeah, that one matches one of the images in the Splendor Solace series almost exactly. I don't know which one though.
I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, I've always wondered with that Rider-Waite image if they're learning to assemble a star.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The 5-pointed star.
Yeah.
Because they have the form almost there, but it's still outside of, or are they taking it apart because they're teenagers and they want to blow things up? I mean, it's like.
So anyway, this deck is growing on me also, and as I told you a couple weeks ago, I scored one of the signed and numbered books.
Congratulations again.
Which was only 78 books, and I got 77 of 78.
In under the wire.
Yeah, but this large book is identical to the book that's comes with the deck. And so you don't necessarily have to buy the big book, but
also no glasses with a big book, so you can.
Yeah, for an old geezer like me, it's a lot easier to look at it in the bigger book. Okay, let's see one more, and we're gonna wrap it at 11.
Well, really quickly on the last one you showed with that deck, to me, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention alchemically the red king and the white queen, the alchemical allusions there to the chemical wedding.
Yeah.
Actually the Splendor Solus. You have the Deviant Moon.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring back this Splendor Solus. People are going to have to imagine it because we need to move on. And I don't think we're teaching alchemy here tonight.
Well, to me, that's the only way to look at that that vessel. So I'll move on. We didn't really actually touch the Splendor Solus card, so I'll
No, we
desist.
didn't. And we've been going for 3 hours, Jordan. And so I have my limits.
Those are important. There's a power there.
Yeah. And now I cannot find the Deviant Moon book. Where the heck is that?
How many books and tarot decks do you have sitting around you, Skip?
Oh God!
I just imagine you have
you
stacks.
really want to see?
Skip doesn't have water anymore. He's bathing in decks.
I cannot. I'll tell you what. I cannot find. I cannot find the Deviant Moon deck or book right now, and I know I had it.
It's over on the left, about 4 inches down.
No, it's right here somewhere. It's got to be. Oh, here it is. Okay, here it is. Okay. So here it is. I have it. So I will show you my books or my decks after the Deviant Moon, but let's go to the Deviant Moon for a moment. Okay, so whoops, I didn't get it, did I? Somehow missed it. Just a minute. Preview. Share. Okay, now you've got the Deviant Moon. I'll make it bigger. So that's the Hanged Man and the Deviant Moon.
Yeah, there's such a carnival quality with these images. I just love this deck.
Yeah, it's a very interesting deck. I don't think I would ever read from it because you'd scare the pants off of anyone you were reading for. But anyway, I'll just read what he says here. With an ankle bound by rope, a young man hangs upside down with his hands behind his back. It is unknown if someone has tied his hands or if he places them there apathetically. In either case, they represent unused potential that might be better applied in the construction of a dynamic future. The man's inverted reality drains all proactive notions from his mind, though he often thinks of what he should be accomplishing right now. There is no urgency from within to act upon his dreams. Time steadily and relentlessly slips away as he dangles in a static state of limbo. The Hanged Man is complacent in his stagnation, and he allows life's opportunities to pass by like the breeze. His crossed leg implies that he is filled with indecision and internal conflict. Even so, he does not struggle or attempt to escape. He wears the finest of clothing and appears to be well nourished. Comfort has immobilized his ambitions and removed his desire to liberate himself from his wooden post. Only when his current setting becomes too agonizing to endure will he muster the conviction to break free of the restraints. Upright meanings: when the hangman swings into your reading, he personifies your suspended ambitions. Regrettably, you might have become lazy in the pursuit of your dreams. Perhaps your need to feel secure is preventing you from taking a risk and achieving success. Stop lingering around hoping for inspiration to come move you into action. Know that you will stay in one place forever unless you decide to cut the ropes fashioned by fear. It is worth the effort to struggle for a better position in life Do not postpone your future any longer. The day you have been waiting for is right here now, or here right now. Reverse meaning, in a reverse position, the hangman is obviously no longer upside down. He seems to float in the air like a balloon on a string. Gravity no longer applies and time comes to a standstill. This metaphor represents stalled advancement in your life. Progress grinds to a halt, causing an inconvenient pause in your momentum. You may find yourself getting caught in circumstances, internal or external, that delay your plans and hinder your aspirations. In addition to his pocket watch, the hourglass shape of the hangman's torso subtly suggests the notion of time. Okay. That is all he wrote on the Hanged Man. So that's that. So we never did get to Stephen Heller. And I suppose it's sort of superfluous at this point.
I think the one image piece from that card was that with the watch hung from the heel, what goes up must come down. It's hang time.
Yeah. Let's see. Now I'm trying to figure out how I could get my camera off my apparatus so I could show you my heap right now.
The heap. Oh, that's what a great, the heap. That's the proper levity for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally buried here.
Yeah. Hey, Carl, it's okay. Go.
Hold on. Here, I'm going to close.
My dog's starting to cry. She's all excited thinking she's going to see tarot decks.
Oh, God.
Maybe she just has to go. I don't know. But
yeah, I don't seem to. Okay, never mind. I'm just gonna do this as a periscope thing. I'll take off my
walk
cloaking.
around with it.
Okay, so here's removing my cloaking. So there's my screen with you folks on it. And here's my heap on my desk in front of me.
Oh, that is a beautiful heap. That's my kind of order for things you're working with. That's beautiful.
Ironically, I work organizing stuff. I'm an archivist, and that is like giving me like
and this here, this is the company right here that we're going to take public. And you probably don't believe me, but that's why I got interrupted a couple of weeks ago. And
yeah, I love the desk. Honestly, I have a concept in my studio where the tide's either in or the tide's out. And when the tide's in, well, that means I'm not there. You know, I've cleaned up and it's all just water and sand. But then when the tide's out, I'm out there on the beach working. There are shells and trash and stuff all over the place. So if you walk in and it's a disaster, something's about to be done, you walk in and it's really, really neat, and I'm probably about to start something. So
yeah, you probably know of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I have a couple of those myself. One of my rules for life is never trust anyone with a clean desk.
Yes, you know, and his whole thing about clutter, and I'm like, look, water conforms to its cup. And my cup, I'm conforming to lots of activity and lots of resources, open and closed. And yeah, the sign of a clean desk is someone's on vacation. They're not doing anything.
Well, or either that or they don't know how to differentiate between what's important and what's not.
Well, that's true.
Because
well, you guys have officially hurt my feelings.
You have a clean desk, Nick?
Oh, so clean. So clean.
Oh, really?
But I thought you did work, Nick.
Just kidding.
I thought you did work.
I'm just kidding. I mean, I am a pretty organized person, so I guess I'm not to be trusted. I don't know. That remains to be seen.
Well, see, my joke is I close the hood, and there's lots of stuff going on under there. But on my studio, I'd rather drive with the hood up because I don't have to worry about bumping into things.
So Samantha says, glad I'm not the only one with a heap. Thanks for sharing, Skip. Brilliant people can be disorganized. I do better with the spiritual realm than the material plane. I don't want to be like Jordan Peterson, God bless him. I wish I was on Zoom so bad right now. I wish you were too, Samantha, but I hope you'll work it out by next week.
That was funny with Raquel, and she's getting the heebie-jeebies because that's what's her job. That's funny.
Skip,
Yeah.
what is that card by those books that you have over to your right?
To my right.
You just showed that.
These corporate books?
And go down. There's a few cards, a deck of cards right there.
Oh, those are the cards that I put on I scanned tonight.
Oh, that's okay. No wonder it was familiar. The Divine, is that from the Divine?
Oh, that's right. I do have the Hanged Man from the deck of the Divine, which is Sleeping Beauty, by the way. It's a lovely little story.
Thank you.
And so that is from the Tarot of the Divine, correct? And I actually like that deck pretty well because, especially for people who are just beginning with the Tarot, because it's an easy way to remember all the cards, because every card has a story associated with it. And that's kind of what I want to try to do with the Biblical Tarot, if I can get Tim to do the artwork.
Well, the Divine Tarot there, I mean, it's very Mary Louise von Franz. You get the storytelling aspect that it's better than a peg system, I find, because you get more information stored than just a memory.
Okay, well, I don't want to just chat myself into catatonia here, so I'm going to apologize and call this fun evening to a halt. I just want to observe what our YouTube appearance is here. Let me see, where am I? What happened? Somehow I lost track. Okay, there's YouTube. So we still have 15 people watching us after 3 hours. People, you have to get a life.
That's endurance. Those are some people that can drive that car. That's time. That's the funny thing about the Hanged Man. I mean, that stopwatch or the pocket watch hanging from the heel, it's hang time. It's just hang time.
Yeah, that's what it is. And
you're just hanging in.
If you're ever in a trauma, just go, sit in a church or something.
That's the best advice ever. I mean, zero influence and just allow it steep in it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have a pastor. In fact, that may be detrimental, and it would be detrimental at the Naval Academy chapels. Because the fundamentalists have taken over the chaplain's corps, unfortunately.
Those call fundamentalists that have poor fundamentals.
I liked your example that you gave, though, Skip, about breaking your leg and then having your leg suspended for a very long period of time. When I was 22, I was in traction. And I also had a restart. It was about 6 weeks of not walking and then learning how to walk. So it was about 7 months altogether before I was living a normal life. And I think that was Raquel who talked about being 19. When you're very young, I think it's fortunate in a way, because the only way you're going to do that is if it's forced on you. And then you get to begin kind of as an adult. When I studied education and they talked about adolescence, I mean, nowadays they say it ends at 26. I think for me, it ended around 22.
Mhm.
And
Well, until I was 43, I was very much like most Marines, and I'm not going to give my version of oorah, but I can tell you that oorah is, a girl's version of that. Okay. If I did it, everyone would have to close their ears before I did it, but I'm not going to do it. And so, but when I broke my leg, I changed my direction, and after that, I made 44 trips to India, 23 to Saudi Arabia, and many, many other countries in the time. And that was after I'd already spent 8 years in Japan. And so anyway, it's too late for Nick. We got to let him go to bed.
Yeah. I'm fleeting fast over here.
Yeah.
You can't keep up with all this old
Nicole's
people.
happy. It's just the middle of the afternoon in Australia.
Yeah, well, she's 16 hours in the future, so she already knew what was going to happen.
Right. Okay. Well, if anything bad is going to happen, Nicole, don't tell us.
Yeah, right. Don't blow the surprise.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Anyway, good night. We'll see you next week. Think about what we've talked about at the beginning of this session. I'm going to cut that out, but we can continue to have those conversations as we go forward. I think the important thing is that we're going to lay down the tracks in the coming year and then see where it